Hello and welcome back to the third episode of Doctor Who The Classic Series Action Figures, A History. In today's episode I'm going to be taking a look at the later half of 2009's releases, including the 4th Doctor Adventure Set, Dalek Collector Set 2, yet another variation of the 6th Doctor, and of course the release of the 3rd Doctor 3-packs, including a variation of Dalek, a Sea Devil, and of course the giant Maggots. So sit back and I hope you enjoy yet another episode of Doctor Who nostalgia, looking back at classic series Doctor Who merchandise. The later half of 2009 seen the release of a rather unusual set, being the 4th Doctor Adventure Set. Back when this product was released, I as a fan imagined that we would see a lot more of these sets, or certainly the format of these sets, within the future of the classic series releases, seeing different adventure sets from the different incarnations of the Doctor. However, that really never came to be, and we only got to see this set released as a part of that series, at least under that title. So this set does in fact feature a brand new figure, being the Siren Service Robot, along with a few repaints and re-releases of previous figures seen within the range. So firstly, we have a direct re-release of the 4th Doctor Season 12 figure, as seen throughout the first wave of classic series action figures, which from what I understand is exactly the same figure, with no retools or repaints. It is just a direct re-release, including the sonic screwdriver accessory, along with a swappable smiling and hatted head. The next figure in the set is in fact a direct reuse once again of the original Voc robot sculpt, however this time round repainted in the mint green design. I think this was one of those figures that, although a repaint, a lot of the classic series fans did in fact accept it to kind of add to their army of ever-growing Voc robots, and this one is in fact a really nice colour scheme. This rank of Voc robots within the actual story, the Robots of Death, does have the capability to talk, much like SV7, therefore they have directly used the SV7 sculpt, with the inclusion of the communicator band on the side of the arm. Other than that, it is a direct repaint using a really nice bright mint green colour, and once again there is some really lovely paint taps on the face, including a silver highlight to really emphasise the mouth, nose and the eyes. Much like D84, there was also the option to have the sticker to have a certain number of Voc robot, so on mine we have V32. And comparing to the other Voc robots released so far in the series, another really nice inclusion and attention to detail is the different type of rank that is used around the sides of the uniform. So SV7 has a numerous amount of lines, and D84 and the standard Voc robot here has one singular band. A small accessory that remains an exclusive release to this particular version of Voc Robot is the addition of a small swappable hand, which is exactly the same to the other Voc Robot hands, however this time round has the red corpse marker included within the palm, which is a really cool choice of accessory, and you can swap the hands out to include this piece. The third figure in the set is another re-release of Dalek, this time round from the 4th Doctor story, Destiny of the Daleks, and is the first ever time where we get to see the Destiny colour scheme within the classic series of action figures. So we have a rather pastel-looking grey, and then of course the obvious inclusion is the use of the suicide bombs around the sides of the figure itself. Out of all of the figures within this set, I believe the Suicide Dalek is in fact the one that is most sought after, simply because it is the one that is the most visually different, and in fact the only ever time that this sculpt has been released. So we just have these small circular bombs that have been strapped to the side of the slatted section. These have in fact been sculpted on from what I can see, and have of course been painted in a nice yellow and orange colour, and makes for a very nice and interesting visual variant. Other than that though, of course, due to this being a classic series Dalek, it uses pretty much exactly the same sculpt, with the solid one-piece fender at the very bottom, and there's nothing really too much else to it. The fourth and final figure of the set is the one that got all of the attention when the set was originally released, due to it being a brand new sculpt never seen before within the series. It is of course the Siren Service robot, also simply known as the Mummy robot, as seen throughout the popular 4th Doctor story, The Pyramids of Mars. Now of course this was the main incentive figure of buying this product in the first place. However, looking back, we do of course now know that this sculpt was released a number of times after the release of this set. Of course, soon after, it was released in the second wave of Classic Series action figures, and then repainted within the Pyramids of Mars set a few years later. Sculpting and detail of this figure is in fact rather impressive. Of course, as you would expect from a mummy, it is entirely coated within bandages, and this has been really nicely sculpted to have different bandages going over each other, creating a really nice sense of material and depth. And of course the paint application over the top of this is also rather nice and impressive. It has certainly a dated appearance, having different flecks of dirt around the side, and this is of course replicated all the way around the sculpt. At the very back we do also have the inclusion of a small red pyramid, which is really cool, which I do believe is the way that Sutekh commands the robots, of course, within the actual story. However, as an action figure stands, of course, due to these being rather restricted within the actual story, there isn't really too much going on. He can move from side to side and move his arms up and down, but other than that, there's not much. Very much accurate to what is seen within the story itself. Even though the Mummy was released on numerous different occasions, something that did remain exclusive for this particular release is the accessory that this Mummy robot comes with. It is of course the canopic jar, this time round with the inclusion of a jackal head. Now this is a really fun accessory. I can remember back when I was 9 being absolutely fascinated by this product. So we do have some little Egyptian hieroglyphics down the side, and then a rather nicely detailed jackal head on the very top. This jar is in fact a rather nice sculpt also, however the paint application is rather plain. The future releases in the series would include different bits of weathering and flecks of dirt around the side, however this one is pretty clean for its first ever release. On the inside of the jar we do also get another accessory, which I believe is one of the control devices as seen within the actual story, and a really lovely touch on this, although it is just a simple cylinder, is on the very bottom the inclusion of these really lovely paint apps, including once again a golden band of some Egyptian hieroglyphics. So if you are a collector, do be warned that this did in fact only get released once, therefore you may want to track this little accessory down. However, the Mummy itself is in fact pretty standard on both of its 2 releases, both within this set as well as the classic Wave 2 line. Released around the same time as the 4th Doctor Adventure set, we have the continuation of the Dalek Collector sets with Dalek Collector Set 2. Now this is in fact the B&M re-release that did occur a few years later after the original release that was in fact a Forbidden Planet exclusive. However, for the most part the figures do remain the same. The only difference being this Dalek here having ridged light bulbs on the very top as opposed to the clear, smooth light bulbs that are seen on the original release. But other than that, it is pretty much the same. The first of these Daleks is from the 1964 First Doctor story, The Dalek Invasion of Earth, and is the Saucer Pilot. Now of course the second Dalek that we've seen so far from the same story. Now this is in fact exactly the same Dalek to the Saucer Commander, just with half of the skirt painted. As you can see at the very bottom, we have this rather unusual selective band pattern where we have a few of the different slats painted black and the rest remaining silver to differentiate it from the standard Invasion of Earth Dalek drones. Of course, due to it being from the Invasion of Earth, we have the return of the satellite dish at the very back. Other than that, we have just a little black band at the top of the eye stalk. It is a rather cool release and a nice figure to go next to the Saucer Commander. Next up in Dalek Collector Set 2, we have the second Supreme Dalek from the 3rd Doctor era. The other Supreme Dalek in fact being released in the first Dalek Collector Set from Planet of the Daleks. Now upon release, this Supreme Dalek from Day of the Daleks did in fact have a little bit of a debate behind it, due to the fact that the paint application is completely wrong from the Supreme Dalek that we've seen within the actual story. This section here in the very middle where we have the barrel, as you can see, does of course have the black paint taps around the mesh section. For some reason, Character Options decided to keep this section black. Maybe it might be down to uniformity, to make this Dalek look more similar to the other figures and to make them look the same on the shelf. I don't quite know. It might be quite nice to see another re-release of this Dalek in the future, however with more accurate paint taps. And other than that, the majority of this Dalek, as you can see, is just a gold design, including the skirt, the mesh, even the gun, and even a little bit of a paint tap on the eye stalk that is also a gold band. And just to give a closer look at the different style of ear bulbs that are used on this Dalek from the re-release version a few years later, we do have a few ridges on these. The original version was in fact a lot more like the original Dalek Collector Set 1 Dalek, so we do have the similar shape, however it is of course just a complete smooth design as opposed to this re-release ridge version. And the third Dalek from Dalek Collector Set 2 is the Emperor Guard Dalek from the second Doctor story, Evil of the Daleks, which is a very similar sculpt to the other 60s Daleks seen so far in the range. This time around, the skirt at the very bottom does once again include blue hemispheres. However, this time around, due to it being from the second Doctor era, the blue that has been used on these is a little bit darker to that of the Dead Planet Dalek from Dalek Collector Set 1. And of course, the most noticeable difference at the very top, this time around your standard silver dome has of course been replaced by a glossy black dome. This Dalek did see a later re-release in 2013 as a part of the 50th anniversary Toys R Us exclusive sets. However, the ear bulbs were of course converted to the later larger yellow designs. Continuing on with the theme of Forbidden Planet exclusive releases, we have the first ever singular figure in the line that is a Forbidden Planet exclusive release and isn't an SDCC release. It is of course the 6th Doctor regenerated within the 5th Doctor's outfit, seen throughout the last scene of the Caves of Androzani and into the first 6th Doctor story, The Twin Dilemma. Now this always baffled me because in the very early days of the classic series line, Colin Baker is not really known to sell well, and yet here we are a few figures in and we've already seen 3 different variations of the 6th Doctor, and this one is a very unusual one indeed, only virtually seen for a few minutes. However, it is once again one of the rarest figures within the classic series line of action figures, and I'm incredibly happy to have it as a part of my collection. Of course I am, because it's Colin, and why wouldn't I want this figure? So stripping this figure down to its basics, of course the main base is the regular 5th Doctor body, as first seen within Wave 1, as well as the Time Crash set. However, this time round it has received a paint job to make it look like the 5th Doctor's costume as seen throughout his last series of adventures. This does include a few revisions to the shirt, as you can see, now with a green highlight underneath the collar section, as well as a revision to the cricket jumper to now include much thicker black and red lines that can be seen on the V section, as well as this bottom section here. Now within the actual stories themselves, of course the 5th Doctor jumper did change, however this is just the same regular sculpt from the original release. The bottom half of the figure also sees a few costume variations, but using exactly the same sculpt. This time round, the cream trousers have been replaced by a much different design, including a base of salmon pink, along with a white pinstripe, with even small detailings of a black outline around the sides. All of this does of course have a few mud splatters coming up the sides of the leg, as well as into the crotch section, and also the shoes at the very bottom have been also given a coating of mud, which is a rather nice inclusion and does look rather realistic. It would in fact be quite a few years before we see a cleaned up version of these trousers seen within the Resurrection of the Daleks set. And then of course the thing that everybody is here for this particular figure variant, we have a mass amount of mud splatter down the left hand side, which is a complete over exaggeration from what is seen within the actual story, and recently we have seen a revision of this within the B&M 2019 collector sets, finally seeing a variation of Regeneration 6th Doctor. It's a nice inclusion, however not accurate at all. And something of which that I didn't notice back in the day is a slight adjustment that has been made to the 6th Doctor sculpt, now with an extended neck to suit that of the regular 5th Doctor body. Of course, one of the disadvantages of using a direct reuse of the 5th Doctor body is that this 6th Doctor regenerated does rather unusually stand a little bit taller to that of your regular 6th Doctor sculpt, which when side by side it is in fact a very noticeable difference. And also comparing this original version of the 6th Doctor regenerated to the recently released B&M set version in 2019 of the 5th Doctor regenerated, there has been some noticeable improvements and changes within the paint application. Winter of 2009 came around the corner, and so far within the classic series, we had seen releases of the 1st, 2nd, 4th, 5th and 6th incarnations of the Doctor, with one big obvious gap between 2nd and 4th, and that gap was filled en masse as we had the release of the 3rd Doctor action figure collector sets, once more exclusive releases to Forbidden Planet in 3 sets, including the 3rd Doctor and Dalek from Death to the Daleks, the 3rd Doctor and giant green maggots from the Green Death, and the 3rd Doctor in cloak, along with repainted Sea Devil from Doctor Who and the Sea Devils. I can recall these sets in fact being quite sought after back in the day, to the extent where they sold out from Forbidden Planet stores online as well as in-store quite quickly, meaning that I needed to get 2 of the 3 of these sets in fact shipped from America in order to add them to my collection back in 2009. The 3rd Doctor and Dalek from Death to the Daleks is in fact one of the rarer sets, I do believe, of the 3, including a really lovely silver and black Dalek along with the machine gun sculpt, as well as a 3rd Doctor that looks very similar to that of the Doctor that also comes with the giant green maggots, of course with the black blazer and the red lining around the sides, along with the grey frill shirt underneath and the red bow tie. The main difference for this 3rd Doctor in particular is the use of this boot sculpt at the very bottom, painted in a rather nice glossy black colour. The likeness to John Pertwee on this figure, much like the 1st and 2nd Doctor, is once again pretty spot on and impressive. There was in fact a rather large similarity between all 3 of the 3rd Doctor figures seen throughout these sets, using pretty much exactly the same paint application, with this really lovely highlight around the sides of the curls on the hair, emphasising the different details and depths within it. And then of course we also have the sharp detailing of the eyes in the very middle, something of which that did become a little bit wonky over the years on the re-release versions of the 3rd Doctor, as it is fair to say the 3rd Doctor out of all of the Doctors has seen quite a variety of different paint jobs, especially within the likeness. Other than that, the sculpt itself, as with all of the 3rd Doctor figures, is pretty much exactly the same. One of the main pieces that were of course interchanged throughout the different releases was this section within the blazer that could either be the shirt frilled with the cravat, shirt frilled with the bow tie as with this figure, or even the absence of the bow tie or cravat seen on the 4th Doctor regenerated. As for the Dalek of the set, once again this uses exactly the same sculpt to your regular drone classic Dalek. This time round the base has in fact been split into the 2 separate sections, including the black at the bottom and then the silver row at the top. The rest of the figure follows a black and silver theme, and it is in fact rather smart, and I think that is an underrated design. At the very top we do also have the bulbs, once again including the smooth non-ridged design that have been sculpted in a transparent orange plastic. Of course, the main feature of this Dalek that makes it stand out from virtually every other classic Dalek that has ever been released as a part of the Doctor Who series is the machine gun, as this sculpt has only ever been released on this figure, therefore is in fact quite a rare one. It is in fact a rather nice design. We have this unusual engraving that has in fact been sculpted into the gun itself, and then it of course juts out at the very top here with this rather unusual, almost funnel design. The later release of the Death to the Daleks colour scheme as a part of the Sound Effects Daleks range Wave 1 does of course feature exactly the same colour scheme, however this time round the ear bulbs have been changed from the orange to the standard clear transparent design, and the machine gun has been replaced by your usual classic series Dalek gun. The second release of the 3rd Doctor also sees the second variation in sculpt. The main base of this figure once again remains exactly the same with the blazer design, however of course the main difference is the inclusion of the cloak over the top, which this sculpt would also see a number of re-releases in the many years to come, including the Carnival of Monsters variation of 3rd Doctor, and of course the B&M 4th Doctor from the talons of Wang Chiang. This time round, the blazer underneath has been painted a lovely navy blue colour to give the impression of a velvet design, I do believe. And then of course in between this we also get the additional brand new sculpt of the frilled shirt, this time round with the addition of the cravat, which has been painted in a black. The lower half of the figure introduces the second Third Doctor leg sculpt design, this time round including the trousers and the shoed variation. The inclusion of the cape over the top of the figure actually impacts the costume itself in a rather effective way, making this figure look like an entirely new sculpt altogether. We have the inclusion of these really lovely buckles sculpted into the cloak itself, as well as this nice highlight down the sides of the cloak to give the impression of lining. On the very back we do also get a series of different creases, which does look incredibly cool, along with this divide line in the very middle also. Of course, as with all the Third Doctor cloaks, this has been sculpted in order to be removable to give further exposure of the velvet jacket underneath. However, on this original version, the cloak itself is in fact made of a rather thick plastic, as opposed to your more flexible PVC seen on the later releases. Therefore, the cloak itself is a lot harder to remove than that of, say, the Carnival of Monsters version of Third Doctor, as seen within the 11 Doctors set. Of course, the release of a new incarnation of Doctor does also call for a brand new release of Sonic Screwdriver. This time round, the 4th Doctor standard sculpt has been repainted to include the yellow collar section, along with the black stripes, and of course the red emitter at the very top. And it has to be said, the paint application on this Sonic is in fact rather sharp indeed, and the Sonic did also come on all the different versions of Third Doctor released in 2009. The second Third Doctor figure was of course packaged alongside a variation of Sea Devil. This sculpt is a direct reuse of the one as seen throughout 2008's Wave 1, however this time round with a drastic repaint. I really do welcome this variant in fact, and I think it does look very cool, especially alongside the original version. I think that this figure is one of those examples where a repaint can do the world of good, because even though it is just a repaint, it does look entirely different. This time round it has been given a much more darker, glossy design in the paint apps, giving the skin the appearance of that of almost a waxy texture, or even a damp texture, which would make sense considering that the Sea Devils have came out of the ocean. Of course, this time round the eyes are once again a darker blue, making them stand out even more than the original version. Another slight alteration is the paint apps on the gun piece, which has now been painted in a silver and black as opposed to the golden and silver design. And comparing the two Sea Devils side by side, I think that both of them are good in their own way, and it's just a shame that we never got to see a Warriors of the Deep variation of Sea Devil to add to the lineup. The third and final of the Third Doctor 2009 twin packs is a very unusual set, and I'm very surprised that Character Options got away with this one without getting too much criticism. It is the Third Doctor alongside the Green Maggots, which on appearance looks like a perfectly good set. However, the recommended retail of this set was $24.99, exactly the same price to the previous two Third Doctor sets that I've just taken a look at. Therefore, the Maggots are filling the spot of an entire Dalek or Sea Devil figure to make this set the same price as the others. However, somehow, probably due to it being classic collectors, it's still sold, it's still got snapped up, and I do believe that this set is still quite sought after from collectors of the line. You're probably thinking that we're having a little bit of deja vu with this variation of Third Doctor figure, and that's because we are. This Third Doctor is basically a mishmash of the two previous ones. So we have the top half of the Death of the Daleks version of Third Doctor, and then at the very bottom we have the trouser and shoe variation seen on the Third Doctor and Sea Devil set. It makes for a nice version of costume, it is quite cool, however there's not really much difference at all, and as with the others it does also come with the Sonic Screwdriver. And then of course the figures of the set that we are all here for. I use the term figures in a rather loose and sarcastic manner. We have the giant maggots, of course, from the Green Death, which admittedly, these are really cool additions to the collection, and they are always without fail on the front of my Third Doctor shelf, simply because they are such an iconic design, and I think that they've been really nicely recreated within the action figure form. So all of them are in different poses, although follow exactly the same detail really. So we have the straight one here that's just kind of trundling along. Then we have the one that's about to reach and jump for somebody, and then we have one at kind of the midway point about to jump for somebody. Maybe it's walking along, don't quite know. But the general design itself is quite nice. We have a cream design here on the base colour, and then we have this darker paint wash that has been applied over the top to really nicely get into the crevices of the design and highlight those different ridges. Of course, on the back we do have a few stippled circular sections, and then of course at the very top we also get the design of the mouth, which I do believe in the actual story was a cast of a ferret skull, or at least a ferret jawbone, which is in fact quite grim. The one on this one is in fact closed, and then the one on this one here is a little bit open, once again like it's about to jump for somebody, and then this one is kind of a midpoint between the two. Once again we have the sculpting of teeth in there as well that is rather impressive for the scale. Then of course all three of them have been coated in this green goo to give the impression of the polluted material that of course they did dump within to the mines in the actual story itself. So yeah, a nice three accessories. However, it would have been nice to see something else in this set, maybe the controversial big sort of developed maggot from the story with the big wings or something like that, just to make this set a bit more exciting and worth the price tag. The 2009 Doctor Who Classic series of action figures ends off with another singular figure release, this time round a variation of 4th Doctor costume from the season 13 story, The Pyramids of Mars. Now this is of course a brand new sculpt completely different to the season 12 version of 4th Doctor that we have seen within Wave 1 as well as the 4th Doctor Adventure Set, and it does of course also come with this little device as well. Now this is an unusual release. In fact, up until a couple of years ago, where the sculpt was re-released alongside Leela and K9 as a part of the B&M series, this figure remained entirely exclusive to just this Forbidden Planet release from 2009, and therefore, because it's by itself and it doesn't come with any eye-catching monster, I think that quite often this variation of 4th Doctor was forgotten about by a lot of collectors because it is simply just by itself and doesn't really have too much to it. However, the actual costume itself is really, really lovely and features a lot of detail. So the first noticeable difference is in fact in the sculpt of the scarf, and is something that I do forget about quite a lot. So this one does have quite a lot of weathering, as you can see on the original two versions, and then we have this much more cleared up version here. However, the actual length of the scarf, as you can see, has in fact been shortened. This one is trailing along the floor, and this one is a little bit shorter, and the other main difference is if we turn the figure over here, has been painted, compared to this version on the original 4th Doctor that is painted on either side. The very middle of the figure does also feature a brand new sculpt of waistcoat that has really impressively been detailed. We have lots of different small lines on this, including dark purples as well as a little bit of red on a yellow base, of course with these grey buttons up the very middle. And then in the centre of this we also have the orange cravat, which also has some rather nice details of creases and lining. Other than that, of course, the actual coat itself is a slightly more trench coaty kind of design, so we do have the detailing of the lapels and things on there, as well as the buttons coming around the side. Then onto the back we have a few further details of the material stitching, as well as two further buttons at the side, as well as the pockets. The important thing for the collectors, and in fact the exclusive accessory, is this little control panel that the 4th Doctor uses to stop Sutekh in the later half of the Pyramids of Mars. This does have a few nice details on, including a few dials and a few buttons that have also been given a few rather nice and sharp looking paint apps. I must admit, I think that the paint application on this original version, compared to the B&M re-release version, is in fact superior on this original design. The paint application on the face especially seems a little bit sharper and more detailed compared to the rather orangey skin colour of the second re-release version in B&M. And that brings to a close another episode of the Doctor Who Classic Series Action Figures A History. I hope you have enjoyed it. Join me in the next episode of this series as I take a little bit of a 7th Doctor theme, featuring two releases from the 7th Doctor era, including the release of the Imperial Remembrance Dalek, alongside the release of the first ever Classic Series TARDIS boxes, long before the B&M re-release line, as well as the return of the Classic Series Doctor Who action figure waves for one last time. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I hope you continue to enjoy this series on the Host Productions. So thanks for watching, I shall see you all next time. Bye for now.